Fortunately, Moe and the rest did not hesitate. When they saw Huang Yueli had taken down quite a few scarlet-eyed blood bats when she attacked, they had immediately followed her and headed in the direction of the cave. All of their cultivation had exceeded her by quite a large margin, hence after running for a while, they had already overtaken her. Moe and Moe were worried that the scarlet-eyed blood bats may catch up to her. In the end, they each both grabbed one arm on each side and pulled her along. As Huang Yueli ran along begrudgingly, her heart was stifled with anger. Her low cultivation was really a huge problem. In the past, it was always her who had to drag people along. Where did she ever give others a chance to drag her? This flame spirit physique was also too infuriating. Although it's supposedly an innate physique gifted by the heavens, however the conditions to advance are really too harsh. The speed of the scarlet-eyed blood bats were extremely fast, adding on to the fact that they were flying magical beasts. With a flap of its wings, it set off a huge gale. As the few of them ran with all their might, they ran past the mountain cave that she had pointed out earlier. However, the scarlet-eyed blood bats were still pursuing them relentlessly, and it seemed like they had even increased in numbers. Looking back, all one could see was one huge mass of creepy black wings. It really made one's flesh crawl. What to do? We can't shake them off. Damn it. This is not normal. Usually if we leave their area of activity, they wouldn't continue in pursuit. Huang Yueli furrowed her brows deeply and asked, Murong and I. What the hell did you do just now? Why would you attract such a large cloud of scarlet-eyed blood bats? By now, Murong and I had already ran until she could no longer feel her legs, yet no one had taken the initiative to help her and pull her along. In order not to lag behind, she had already mustered all her strength to flee. At this moment, she didn't even have strength to talk properly. I don't know, when I was near the vein, accidentally stepped on a small blood bat. It looked super scary, even its whole body was dyed red like blood. I was too scared, and killed it. Who knows, after it died, so many bats started chasing me from behind. I ran and ran, damn. Why don't you just change your gender with your fifth brother? Huang Yueli could not help but ridicule. As a man, even at the verge of death, Luo Jiyun did not dare to kill. However, Murong and I, whose appearance was that of a beautiful young lady, did not even hesitate to kill an innocent little bat for no reason. Luo Jiyun, who was innocently dragged and could only laugh bitterly as he asked, Sister-in-law, I did not provoke you. Can you quickly tell us what should we do now? She was obviously the one with the lowest cultivation among them all. Yet after spending the past few days together, they had already deemed her to be the second most important person in the team. Now that Li Moying was not here, when met with danger, the first thing that came to their minds was to seek her opinion. Huang Yueli replied, after hearing Murong's story, the one that she had killed should be the young of the scarlet-eyed blood bat king. Only the scarlet-eyed blood bat king and its descendants have a blood-red body. So it looks like it won't be easy to shake off these scarlet-eyed blood bats. Our only option left is to fight. Fight? How can we fight? There's so few of us, look there. It's a massive cloud of them there. Or sister-in-law, are you saying that you have 100 of those thunder flame balls? Huang Yueli could not help but glared at him. Even if I have 100 of them, I wouldn't waste them on saving someone who has seeked death themselves. You. Murong and I was furious. She was so angry that she wanted to refute, but she couldn't. Huang Yueli looked at the surrounding terrain when her eyes suddenly lit up. I've got it. Let's go over there. She pointed out in a direction. You can also listen on. Just 3 miles ahead, 2 mountains stood side by side. The 2 mountains were very close to each other, leaving only a narrow gap in the middle. enough only for 2 or 3 people to pass through. This was the legendary Heaven's Line. The few of them saw that from afar and immediately understood Huang Yueli's intention as a spark of hope ignited in their hearts. With this spurring them on, everyone's legs felt lighter as they sped up and rushed into the gap. Because the gap was very narrow and the scarlet-eyed blood bat's wings were very wide, only 1 to 2 blood bats could pass through this narrow passage at one time. This had eased the pressure off their backs as the number of scarlet-eyed blood bats had significantly been reduced. Towards the onslaught of such a small-scale attack, with the strength of several cultivators of the fifth realm, one person was sufficient as they took turns to cope with the scarlet-eyed blood bats. Finally, everyone could heave a sigh of relief as they bent down and gasped for their breaths. Damn, I thought we were done for. I don't want to end up a shriveled-up corpse. Luo Jiyun cringed when he thought back on the dried corpse along the way and he started gagging. Huang Yueli couldn't help but laugh. Junior brother Luo, your courage is too small. You should learn more from that junior sister of yours. That's called recklessness. There's no way I'm learning from her. If I want to learn, I'd rather learn from you, sister-in-law. You are courageous and have a lot of skills. You are a heroine. No wonder you even managed to melt that huge iceberg, senior brother of mine. In just a short span of 10 days, Luo Jiyun had already been thoroughly filled with respect towards Huang Yueli. From the bottom of his heart, he really respected and admired this future sister-in-law of his. There was even a shred of envy hidden towards Li Moying. Not only was senior brother's ability astounding, even his luck was heaven-defying. To have met such an amazing girl like sister-in-law, just how did he even get to meet her? When Murong and I heard his words, her heart was uncomfortable, but she also knew that she herself was to blame for this near catastrophe. She did not dare utter a word and only sat with her head hung low in a stupor. Huang Yueli also had no time to take care of such an unruly little lady with a princess syndrome. She turned her head to take a look and saw that Moe was still wielding his long sword and was diligently slashing away at the approaching scarlet-eyed blood bats. No matter how many corpses of the scarlet-eyed blood bat had piled up before them, the scarlet-eyed blood bat seemed to not fear them as they continued to rush at them in a mad frenzy. The scarlet-eyed blood bat rushed to squeeze into the tiny gap as they all had on sinister glares that clearly indicated that all they had on their mind was to suck their blood dry. Huang Yueli stood up and said, "The way things are going now is also not a long-term solution. There are a few thousands of these scarlet-eyed blood bats, we can't continue on like this. This would only be an endless slaughter and we won't even know when they would retreat. There's also no way we can stay tens of days in here. What should we do then?" She replied, "I would like to trouble 3 big brothers to hold the fort here while Luo Jiyun and I go explore where this path leads to. If we can find an exit, then we would be able to escape safely." She had only comforted the few men and didn't bother about Murong and I. Murong and I staggered as she stood up with wobbly legs as she took the initiative and said, I will also follow you." Not because she was not able to contribute much to the small team, but because she wanted to follow Luo Jiyun. She could clearly see that in this team, only Luo Jiyun was concerned about her life and death. Those 3 guards of senior brother's orders were only to protect the third miss. That didn't include her at all. Huang Yueli could see her intentions and gave her a meaningful smile and did not say anything further as she walked ahead. You can also listen on. The 3 of them trudged along the narrow passage as they ventured further and further in. At the beginning, there was still some light that had shone down from the peak, however, the deeper they went, the dimmer it became. The peaks here were much higher from where they entered and the sunlight could no longer reach the far depths of this narrow gap. As it got darker and darker, the path could no longer be seen clearly. Luo Jiyun's complexion paled. "Sister-in-law, don't tell me that this path leads to a dead end. Moreover, it's really dark in here, the sunlight isn't able to reach here, if we continue to tread down this path, will there be any problems? With the snap of her fingers, a flame appeared at her fingertip. Huang Yuele flicked it in the air and the flame flew out in an arc and suddenly 8 similar-sized flames danced in the air. With another deft movement of her fingers, these 8 flames flew to the front on their own and spread out on each side of the mountain wall, illuminating the entire path as if it was day. Luo Jiyun looked dazedly when he saw what just unfolded before his eyes. This was a very difficult feat to achieve. To even be able to control each flame's size, brightness, and each was identical, this could only be done by a cultivator of at least the second realm. However, Huang Yuele was only of the first realm, which means that her fire attribute talent was at an absolutely terrifying level. Being a 7th grade talent of the gold attribute himself, he still felt that in terms of harmony between himself and his attribute was far lacking compared to hers. Even Murong and I who saw the scene before her was shocked. It looked like, this country bumpkin, her talent wasn't as bad as she had thought. Huang Yuele replied, let's head in further for a bit. I have this feeling that this is not a dead end because there's still wind blowing through, so there should be an exit somewhere further down. Hearing her words, Luo Jiyun and Murong and I both became alert as they followed her down the path. Sure enough, after they persisted on, they finally saw the exit. Murong and I rushed over ecstatically but screamed out loud, "Oh! Why is it the edge of a cliff?" Huang Yuele and Luo Jiyun rushed over as well and discovered that the other end of this gap was actually the edge of a cliff. If they walked 10 more steps, they would be at a precipice, and when they looked down, it was just a pitch-black abyss that looked endless. They looked at each other. You've got to be kidding. Don't tell me there is no other way. On one end, we have those scarlet-eyed blood bat, the other is a cliff. Murong Ni's face turned white, her face crumbled and looked as if she was going to cry any moment. Huang Yuele remained calm and studied the surroundings. She suddenly said, look, the mountain wall on this side isn't very high. If you can climb up the vines and walk over from the top, it should be feasible. Luo Jiyun's eyes lit up. Sister-in-law, your eyes are really sharp. But, before Luo Jiyun could even smile, he was scared by this, but of Huang Yuele's and his face remained somber. But if we climb up this way, it would take a lot of time. If the scarlet-eyed blood bat follow the path and chase us down, it would be very dangerous to battle with them, we might even accidentally fall down the cliff. Then what are we to do? He asked. How about this, I can set up an array here, and seal the scarlet-eyed blood bats within for an hour. This period of time should be enough for us to climb up and escape. After that it would be difficult for them to track us down after that. You can also listen on. Luo Jiyun said, that's great. It's still the best to rely on sister-in-law. I'll go and inform the big brothers. He hurried back along the same path. Murong and I also wanted to follow him, but she was stopped by Huang Yuele. Don't be in a hurry to leave first. Come over and help. You're asking me for help? Murong and I was surprised. Huang Yuele nodded her head, that's right, the area needed to control this array can't be too large. I'm afraid that I can't completely block the exit, that's why it's best to have 2 arrays instead. One on the left and one on the right. You are also an array master, so stay behind and help lay the other array. Murong and I widened her eyes and sneered. Ha ha ha. There's also this day that you would seek my help. Aren't your standards for arrays very high and wouldn't even look at me, who is a low-leveled array master? Huang Yuele's expression sank. Please don't misunderstand. I am not seeking for your help. I am helping you save your own life. If you aren't afraid that you'd be sucked dry by the scarlet-eyed blood bats later, then you don't have to stay behind to lay the array. Hearing such words that she could not refute, she couldn't say anything but her expression darkened. Huang Yuele pulled out a drawing of an array formation and passed it to her. Just follow this array formation. If you're unsure of anything, just ask. For the materials, you should have them all. These are all common second-grade materials and crystals. As an array master, you should have them readily. Murong and I was used to being spoilt and unruly. Usually, other than senior brother, she wouldn't listen to anyone else's instructions. Not to mention this fox demoness she hated the most. However, the situation called for it and she could only choose to bow down to the person she hated for now. Murong's heart was filled with unwillingness. However, she could only take the drawing and start to study it. When she was about 70% through studying the drawing, Huang Yueli started to lay the array. There were quite a few points which she wasn't too clear, however she would not ask that fox demoness for advice. Sticking on to her stubbornness and pride, she could only depend on herself and started to lay the array. Seeing that Huang Yueli had almost laid out half of the array, Murong and I could only grit her teeth, and using the vague understanding she had in her mind, she took out the materials and quickly started to lay the array. At the start, everything was still fine. Being a second-grade array master, she still had the necessary essential fundamentals. However, when it was time to draw the array pattern, she started to falter. Even though the drawing had been marked in great detail, she simply did not understand some of the rationale behind certain drawings, and with these left unclarified, this became an arduous task. Murong and I wrecked her brains until her head started to hurt, but she still could not understand it. She turned to glance over at Huang Yueli's progress and found that she was almost done with her array. She gnashed her teeth and could only bend down and started drawing. Drawing this way, in terms of speed, it was much slower and would even make it more confusing. When she was about a third done, she felt that she could not continue on. It was at this moment when a voice rang out from behind her. If you are going to continue drawing to your left, this entire array would become scrap. This part of the array is to let the wind element flow up and down the range of the array, so it should go up a little. The voice of Huang Yueli was calm and collected, she only spoke on the facts, without any hint of emotions. However, these to Murong's ears were simply harsh words. As the renowned youngest genius array master, her dignity and pride was once again crushed. You can also listen on. Murong and I gritted her teeth and spat out, "Who needs you to bother? Of course I know how the profound cheat should flow in the array. I am a second-grade array master who had been accredited, how can I not know this?" Huang Yueli raised her eyebrows. "Alright, if you know it, then continue." Huang Yueli did not say anything further, and Murong and I forced herself to calm down and try to comprehend everything on the drawing. However, it was still useless. Just now, what Huang Yueli did was to just point out the principles behind the array pattern. However, based on just Murong's own comprehension, no matter how many times she looked at it, she was still confused. Although this ceiling array could be laid with Tier 2 materials, however, it had a much deeper depth beneath it and its complexity was much higher than ordinary third-tier arrays. Laying it out was comparable to laying a third-tier array. Murong and I was feeling more and more anxious, and with the sudden trembling of her hand, a stroke was immediately drawn. Luckily, the moment her hand shook, a hand immediately pressed down firmly on her wrist and stabilized her movements. Murong and I, do you really know what you're doing? At a time like this, can you not be so proud? If the array fails, everyone is in for it. I think it's better if you move aside, I'll draw the array pattern on my own. Huang Yueli furrowed her brows as she berated in a harsh tone. This entire situation that they were in now were all caused by Murong and I, and yet at this crucial point in time where their escape was imperative, she even wanted to drag them down all because of her own pride. If it wasn't because she was the junior sister of Li Moying, Huang Yueli would really have liked to give her one big tight slap to send her crashing to the wall in death. She had met those who deserved to die, but she had never met anyone who was courting death so eagerly. Who knew? Huang Yueli was angry, but Murong and I totally blew up. She forcefully jerked her hand away from Huang Yueli's grasp and retaliated by flipping her hand, and she struck Huang Yueli to the side in blind rage. Who needs you to care? You are just a lowly cultivator in the first realm. You have no right to teach me. Huang Yueli did not expect her sudden movement and wasn't guarded against it at all. Her cultivation was in reality much lower than Murong Ni by a large margin, so although her full force wasn't imbued into it, however it wasn't something that she could take. Huang Yueli stepped back by quite a few steps before she could dispel the force behind that sudden palm strike. Murong Ni, who had on an initial twisted and ugly expression on her face, suddenly changed into one of panic and screamed out loud. Hey! Yuli! Quick, come over here, don't step back any further, hey! Was she talking to her? Before Huang Yueli could react, she suddenly an abrupt sway and felt her entire body lose control and fell backwards. The current empty space that they were drawing their arrays at was located close to the edge of the cliff. Around places like this where the rocks had been weathered and worn down over the ages were plentiful. Although they looked completely fine on the surface, however, once touched, they would just crack and fall apart. Originally, Huang Yueli had stood at a relatively safe place, however after being pushed back by Murong Ni, she did not have time to look at the path and had taken a few steps back directly. With this sudden fluffy of steps, she had inevitably stepped on a piece of weathered rock. Before she had come to realization, the entire chunk of rock crumbled and tumbled down the cliff. With her standing on that rock, she was also dragged down and fell down into the deep dark abyss. Yuli! Murong Ni screamed out in panic and felt as if her soul had flown away from her body. Although she had hated Huang Yueli and couldn't wait for her to die, however, she had no intention to start now. Otherwise, how could she explain to Li Moying when he came back? You can also listen on. Great, she had only arbitrarily struck out and had gotten rid of that eyesore. Murong Ni shuddered when she thought about Li Moying's reaction when he found out. Thinking back on those previous occasions when he had lost his temper, those eyes that could incinerate everything and that unstoppable oppressive momentum, she felt a chill in her heart. At this moment, she really wished that she could hear Huang Yueli's call for help from below. However, there was no other sounds except that the howling of the winds. Looking below the cliff, one couldn't make anything out except for a large dark abyss. The cold wind was biting. When it blew past her cheeks, it felt as if a knife was cutting her soft skin. All she could hear was the long sad howls of the wind as she felt herself falling deeper and deeper down at a pace that was picking up rapidly. This had all happened too fast, even she had not reacted in time. Until the moment when she had found that her foot had stepped onto thin air, the ground beneath her had already given way and crumbled down and she was thrown down into the abyss. Huang Yueli kept her calm even while she was falling down. She immediately retrieved a hooked claw from the Sky Phoenix ring and threw it at the wall. With a whoosh, the hooked claw flew towards the wall before her eyes, however, just being short of a few meters, it suddenly stopped and sprung back. You've got to be kidding. Why is it so far? She had fallen far too away from the cliff walls. Even the hooked claw she had was of no use. If she could not stop this fall, it only meant that she would continue heading down. Meeting with such a grim situation, Huang Yueli's heart was thumping madly. This had got to be a joke. Her life can't end just like this. All because of a brash and unruly brat whose hobby was to court death, she was dragged into such a mess. Was she going to die in such a ridiculous place and manner? No. She doesn't want to. However, the speed that she was falling was shocking and there was no way she could stop. What could she do? Huang Yueli's brain was working quickly as she started wrecking her brain to think of ideas. It was at this moment when the voice of the little phoenix, Wang Kai, called out. Female devil. Let me out quick. If you don't let this little lord out now, you won't be able to survive. Can you save me? Huang Yueli spoke to him through her mind. Cut this crap. Why don't you have another look to see who this little lord is? This little lord here is the one and only majestic and awe-inspiring divine phoenix in the whole of this soaring heavens continent. Little Phoenix did not forget to inflate his ego and glorify himself almost to the extent as if he was frantically sticking gold onto his face. Huang Yueli opened the Sky Phoenix ring with a thought. In a split second, Little Phoenix spread his wings and flew out. When she saw the appearance of this plump round feathered ball with oil stains at the corner of his beak that had yet to be wiped off, she felt her mood dampen. This little thing really didn't seem too reliable. On usual days, he already couldn't fly very well, he did not even know any spells. Fortunately, he had the true phoenix flames, but even that was also dependent on luck. It could not be produced whenever he wanted to. Now, he said that he could save her. However, his determination and anxiety could be seen from his eyes. This thought of his deeply touched her. At least, those chicken wings were not fed in vain. She took a deep breath and said reluctantly, "Well, Wang Kai, you don't have to really force it. If this sister really loses her life, you just need to go find a new master. Actually you are very adorable. If you can change the way you talk, be less smug, then it's easier to find a new master to buy chicken legs for you." Little Phoenix flapped his wings and screamed. What kind of joke is this? With this little lord around, you won't die so easily. Really? Her eyes were still clouded with suspicion. However, it was at the next moment. You can also listen on. A dazzling scarlet light suddenly flashed before her, and it was extremely bright, like the rising sun in spring. It was getting brighter and brighter. She couldn't help but close her eyes with this sudden glare before her in such close proximity. Next, she felt that her waist had been hooked by something and her descent had slowed down comparably. She could feel that there was something pulling her, supporting her as she felt her body slowly being pulled up. Her eyes flew open immediately. Right before her, she saw something incredible that shocked her and left her stunned momentarily. Before her now, a magnificent phoenix appeared before her. Not a red chubby chick like the little phoenix, Wang Kai, but a truly powerful full-grown phoenix. The scarlet red golden feathers were extremely beautiful, and with its wings fully spread out, one couldn't see its head at first glance. Its talon stretches forward and had firmly hooked onto her waist belt. With a gentle flap of its wings, its entire being seemed to have been lit ablaze, and the surroundings ignited as waves of hot air swept over. With the fluttering of its beautiful scarlet golden feathers reflecting the sun, its brilliance was breathtaking. Wang Kai. Huang Yueli called out softly in disbelief. Don't call this little lord with such a stupid name. Can't you see that this little lord has grown so handsome? A familiar voice was heard in her mind. It's really you, Wang Kai. Since when could you transform into your full-grown form? Hearing that childish, cute and bright voice, Huang Yueli immediately cheered up. Hey! This little lord has already said, this little lord is not called Wang Kai, this little lord is called, it doesn't matter what you're called. What's important is that you are really too cool. Cough, that's of course. Little Phoenix heard her praise and immediately became cocky. Can you bring me back to that mountain wall? Huang Yueli asked. That's not a problem at all. Wang Kai said proudly as he puffed his chest up. Huang Yueli was relieved when she heard this and thought that they were saved. However, after a short while, she felt that something just wasn't quite right. Wang Kai, why do I feel that? I seem to be falling again. That's because you are obviously too heavy. Female devil, you eat too much and you're too fat, you should lose weight. 3 black lines slipped down her forehead. I'm fat. I think the one who should lose weight should be you yourself. Although it can be said that you are a bird, however it seems that you are the fattest bird in the entire household. Even fatter than those mother hens. After another short while. Wang Kai, I still think that I am falling, and it seems that I'm falling faster and faster. Huang Yule began to have cold sweat. I don't think I can hold on, Wang Kai stammered as he said it out in a low voice. Huang Yule was dumbfounded at the moment. She had thought that finally he had grown up, who would have known? Sure enough, she shouldn't have believed in that little boy. What do you mean by you can't hold on? Only a short moment has passed by and you can't hold on already. Weren't you so magnificent and even made such a majestic entrance? Didn't you even guarantee that you'd send me to that mountain wall? It was just mere moments ago, now you say you can't do it. What's with can't do it? Don't ever say that a man can't do it. Such a topic yet set out with an adorable voice really sounded too hilarious. If it was another occasion, Huang Yule would have ruthlessly laughed at him. Unfortunately, she can't bring herself to smile at this moment. You can also listen on. After Wang Kai finished speaking, he began to shrink slowly. The magnificent divine sacred beast which was resplendent just moments ago gradually became smaller and became a big red bird the size of a goshawk. It continued to shrink and became the size of a blood bat. It then continued to shrink and eventually ended back his original size. Although he had been getting smaller, however, little Wang Kai had been trying to keep pulling Huang Yule up as he kept struggling and flapping his wings relentlessly. Hey! Female devil, don't die. Hey! My chicken legs, my chicken wings, don't die. Huang Yule's mouth twitched. It turns out that in the heart of Little Phoenix, her presence was equivalent to chicken legs and chicken wings. Sure enough. That was an important existence. Little Phoenix squeezed out every last sliver of strength, however, he was simply too small now and he couldn't stop the inevitable. The speed of Huang Yule falling increased at an alarming rate, faster and faster she fell, dropping down in a straight line, down into the abyss. She could only hear the whooshing sound as she fell. All that was in her mind now was only one thought: if she did not die, she must change to a pet that was more reliable. She had never met a pet that, other than relying on its master for food, it just dug pits for its master to fall into. A loud reverberating bang resounded, followed by violent tremors. Huang Yule felt a wave of dizziness and a sudden sharp pain behind. After a while, she realized that she seemed to have landed. However, from the top, this abyss seemed to have no end to it. How was it that she had landed so fast? Moreover, although she fell very heavily, however, her overall general situation was good, even her bones aren't broken. Huang Yule endured the pain behind her as she clenched her teeth and grimaced. She began to study her surrounding intently. She discovered that she seemed to be in a large nest and was surrounded by huge eggs, each egg bigger than her. This bird's nest was built on a branch that was sticking out of the mountain's wall. It was extremely large and was laid with a thick layer of straw under. This was what saved her, as it absorbed the impact from her fall and let her land safely without being seriously injured. Although the little phoenix couldn't pull her back to the top, he tried his best to pull her as close to the wall as possible. This had saved her. Thinking of this, Huang Yule felt thankful in her heart. This could be said that she had picked back her life. This credit goes to Wang Kai. Wait, something's wrong. Where's Wang Kai? Huang Yule quickly turned back and searched for the little phoenix and found the little thing was completely exhausted. A small red ball of fluff laid on the nest motionless and had fallen into deep sleep. Huang Yule walked forward a few steps and wanted to hold Wang Kai and put him back into the sky phoenix ring. However, at this moment, there was incessant chirping coming from behind her. Huang Yueli turned back and had a shock. She took a step back subconsciously. She didn't know when, but a bird's egg in the nest had hatched. A hatchling had climbed out from its shell and stood right behind her and looked at her intently. As it was a freshly hatched chick, its feathers were still wet and its round dark eyes looked at her filled with innocence and purity. However, Huang Yueli was immediately alerted. Because what stood before her was not a lovely and cute little hatchling, but it was one that was even taller and bigger than her. Moreover, she had immediately recognized from the feathers on its chest that it was an incredibly powerful magical beast, white golden-crested vulture. You can also listen on. A matured white-winged golden-crested vulture could reach the 7th tier, and even newly born hatchlings were born with strength in the ranks of the 3rd or 4th tier. A matured white-winged golden-crested vulture could reach the 7th tier, and even newly born hatchlings were born with strength in the ranks of the 3rd or 4th tier. For such a strong magical beast, they could only be found in the restricted zone of the Dark Moon Forest. It seemed that the bottom of the cliff was part of the restricted zone. This fall of hers was truly unlucky. How was she to leave this huge nest later? Even if she could escape, as a cultivator of the First Realm, how was she going to protect her little life in this restricted zone? Moreover, she does not even have a single piece of map on her, if she accidentally threaded into the lairs of those 9th or 10th tiered magical beasts. Huang Yueli's heart began to thump wildly. She was facing too many problems now, but she had no time to think about them. It was because that little bird that had been studying her for some time suddenly screeched twice, flapped its stubbly wings and started to waddle towards her. Normally, even when facing a 3rd-tiered magical beast, even if she can't defeat it, Huang Yueli would still be able to escape unscathed. However, she was now in a nest that was perched in such a precarious location. If she were to miss a step, she wouldn't have tears to even cry if she fell. She could only muster up an amiable smile and try to appease that little vulture. I've got to say, my little vulture friend. You can just take it as if I'm not here at all. I'm really just passing by, just passing only. However, the little vulture flapped its wings and suddenly raised its head and gave a few shrill cries into the sky. A few loud, sharp and resounding cries reverberated through the air, as it echoed throughout, and the cries traveled far, far away. Huang Yueli's face drained of color. I'm leaving, I'm telling you, little stupid bird, don't call out anymore, all right? Sister here is not a bad person. White-winged golden-crested vultures were a species that greatly cared for their young. Even though the eggs were left here unattended, the adults were definitely not far off. The moment they could hear the cry of their young, they would know that the eggs have hatched and would most definitely rush back. If a human like her was found to be in the nest with their eggs, could she still stay alive? Huang Yueli was extremely vexed and anxious at this moment. She even took out the chicken thigh that little phoenix liked to eat and tried to bribe the little vulture with it. When the little vulture saw the chicken thigh, it waddled over, took a sniff and bit into it and ate it with relish. Huang Yueli finally let out a sigh of relief. However, the moment it finished the chicken thigh, it raised its head proudly and let out another shrill cry. You stupid bird! You have no conscience. If I had known earlier, I would have laced the chicken thigh with some sedatives and let you sleep. Wait, why didn't I think of that earlier? Huang Yueli was full of regrets and felt that she must have become silly after the fall. Such a simple idea, why couldn't she think of it just now? Now that the little vulture had cried out so many times, with its sensitive hearing, the white-winged golden-crested vulture must have definitely heard and would be back very soon. What should she do? Huang Yueli was extremely anxious and quickly surveyed her surroundings, thinking of a place that she could hide in. At this time, the little phoenix that was lying unconscious on the straw suddenly twitched his claw. Huang Yueli caught a glimpse of it, however, before she could react, she saw that the little vulture seemed to have been deeply attracted by that little red ball of fluff. Its eyes lit up in excitement and started to waddle towards the little phoenix. Huang Yueli was shocked and her face lost all color. That stupid bird. Don't tell me that stupid bird thought that Wang Kai was some sort of fun toy. Or thought that it was something delicious. With these train of thoughts, she rushed towards little phoenix in a fluster. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli immediately used the fastest agility profound skill she had, clairvoyant steps. Her figure was fast as lightning and she used all she could to rush towards little phoenix. Huang Yueli immediately used the fastest agility profound skill she had, clairvoyant steps. Her figure was fast as lightning and she used all she could to rush towards little phoenix. As long as little phoenix was kept into the sky phoenix ring, he was absolutely safe in there. However, even if little phoenix was her spirit pet, it didn't mean that she could just keep him wherever and whenever she wanted. If little phoenix was awake, they would be able to communicate with their minds and little phoenix could willingly return to the sky phoenix ring through their spirit connection. Now that little phoenix was still unconscious, she had to be in contact with his physical body to be able to have him returned into the sky phoenix ring. Her speed was extremely fast, however. Little vulture was even faster. Being born as a fourth-tiered magical beast, it had an innate advantage in speed. It was also closer to little phoenix by a bit, which was why with just a flutter of a few steps, it had overtaken Huang Yueli and had reached the side of little phoenix. It lowered its head and its large beak was just about to peck at the back of the red fluff ball below. Huang Yueli could no longer care about anything else and pulled out a 5th-grade long sword, imbued all the profound chi she had in it. The blade was cloaked in flames and with a flick of her wrist, she aimed towards the weakest point, its eyes. Wait a minute, female devil. Little Phoenix's voice suddenly rang out in her mind. She was stunned and froze momentarily. It was at this moment when the little vulture seemed to have been petrified and couldn't move. One claw was even in midair when it suddenly froze. She didn't know when did little Phoenix woke up and his gaze was firmly locked with the little vulture. After that, the little vulture seemed to be in a trance and under the orders of little Phoenix, it folded its wings, sat down in a docile manner, looking every bit like a good little chick and not at all like a white-winged golden-crested vulture who was renowned for its ferocity. Huang Yueli was slightly dazed when she witnessed all this. Wang Kai's voice resounded in her mind yet again, "Female devil, why are you still in a daze? Little lord here doesn't have much stamina left, all right. Hurry up and tame it." She immediately reacted and bit on her finger and drew out various arrays in the air. She then pressed her finger on the little vulture's head and after a few flashes of light, it screeched out loud before its eyes became very gentle and docile. Huang Yueli knew that this contract had been successfully established and she let out a smile. The little vulture waddled over to her and stuck close to her body as it looked at her with gentle affection. After all, it was much larger than she was and with its affectionate nudge, she almost flew out and she had to order it, "All right, stop messing around, sit down quickly." Its big round eyes were filled with grievance as it wriggled its butt and sat down. Huang Yueli looked at the glossy short feathers on this white-winged golden-crested vulture and felt very satisfied. It was very difficult to establish a contract with such a high order of magical beast. Even if it was a peerless master of the 8th realm, it may not be difficult to kill a high-leveled beast, but to establish a contract would be extremely hard. It was because the contract first needed the magical beast to take the initiative to recognize and accept its master. High-leveled magical beasts were very powerful and arrogant. Even if they were seriously injured, it would only rouse their hatred and it was impossible to make them yield. Therefore, the only way to contract a high-leveled magical beast was through their young. Taking advantage when these magical beasts were young and weak, only through this method could the contract be established. You can also listen on. Cough cough. As I was saying, towards those young ones who had just hatched are an easy task for me. However, those that are, bigger a bit, when this little lord has eaten enough, slept enough and have drank enough to recover all my strength, then, they could be dealt with at that time. He immediately changed his words. Huang Yueli was speechless. This stinky brat only knew how to talk big about himself. Could he not inflate his ego so much for once? Would he die from that? She was almost cheated by him again. After all this talk, he could only control little birds. But when she thought about it, if he was really as fantastic as he had said himself to be, then he could have dealt with those scarlet-eyed blood bats earlier and they wouldn't have needed to escape. Little Phoenix seemed guilty and he awkwardly shrank his neck back and with a swoosh, he took the rare initiative and returned into the Sky Phoenix ring. Huang Yueli could not act like an ostrich and just bury her head to hide away. She could only helplessly watch as two humongous white-winged golden-crested vultures fly towards the bird's nest. The oppressive pressure that seventh-tiered magical beast had was immense, and even though they were still a few hundred meters away, the air was stifling and it was hard to breathe. You can also listen on. At this moment, the usually calm Huang Yueli's face also showed a rare expression of anxiety. Seventh-tiered magical beasts. Seventh-tiered. This was similar to a cultivator of the 8th realm, and it was not something that she could deal with her present cultivation level. No, not even mentioning the deal. She's afraid that all the WWV needed to do was to snuff at her and she would perish due to the immense profound chi its breath held. Not only that, these magical beasts are all territorial by nature, and if that vulture couple finds that in their nest, there was a suspicious figure in it, they would definitely not hesitate to kill her on the spot. She was very clear on this point, but she could only look at the boundless sky but was unable to go up. She could not go down. There was no other way she could leave this nest and could only helplessly look as the two WWV fly closer and closer. Fly closer and closer. At the top of the cliff. The chilling wind blew. Murong and I stared at the spot where Huang Yueli had fallen from and didn't know what she should do. Did that Yuli die just like that? What about her? What should she do now? What kind of explanation should she give to her senior brother? If she told him that Yuli had fallen off on her own, would he believe her? Murong and I was so frantic not because she felt guilt and remorse for accidentally killing Huang Yueli. She was afraid that this matter would spread to others and in turn affect her own reputation. She was perplexed and was thinking about it for a long time and had yet to come up with anything. It was at this moment that she heard a familiar voice. Sister-in-law, junior sister. Are you all ready? We've already lured the scarlet-eyed blood bats over. Hurry and be prepared to activate the array. I'm going to start counting down from 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're coming. This was the plan that was agreed before with Huang Yueli. The few of them would block off the scarlet-eyed blood bats from where they first entered and give the two girls an hour to lay down the array. When an hour was up, they would then lure the scarlet-eyed blood bats over, and after 5 counts, the two of them would activate the array. This plan was originally very reliable. The 4 men had also successfully defended against the scarlet-eyed blood bats. But, who would have ever thought that at such a critical juncture, Huang Yueli would have fallen into the deep dark abyss with the accidental push from Murong and I. The moment Murong and I heard Luo Jian's voice, she jumped up in fear. This is the end. After Huang Yueli had fallen, she had totally forgotten all about the array, and so it still remained incomplete now. But again, even if she had remembered, it was also useless. This was because she could not comprehend the array pattern, and without the guidance of Huang Yueli, it was impossible to finish it. Wait a moment. Fifth brother, don't come over first. Continue and kill as many scarlet-eyed blood bats as you can. Murong and I said with a trembling voice. Ha! Why? But we're already reached. Luo Jiyun was very confused and had already arrived before her. The few of them were very confident in the array of Huang Yueli, and it did not even come across their minds that the array would be incomplete. They had stuck onto the plan and could not wait to climb out from this hellhole. From the moment they had tried to rescue Murong and I, they had been fighting with these scarlet-eyed blood bats for 4 hours straight without any rest, and their fatigue was now clearly shown on their haggard faces. You can also listen on. The 4 of them felt so drained and exhausted that they even found it hard to catch their breaths. Both legs were heavy like lead and their arms weren't much better off. The 4 of them felt so drained and exhausted that they even found it hard to catch their breaths. Both legs were heavy like lead and their arms weren't much better off. For the battle that just happened before, during that span of an hour, Mo San's stamina could not keep up and was bitten by one scarlet-eyed blood bat, and he was even dragged up into the air. If it weren't for Mo Yi's timely save, he would already be a shriveled-up corpse by now. Not to mention, due to the number of these scarlet-eyed blood bat that have gathered in here, the entire cave reeked of a rancid stench and it became unbearable to even breathe. That was why no one wanted to continue to battle with these damned bats any longer. The moment time was up, they could not wait and hurried over to meet up. The moment they reached their destination, the 4 men rushed forward and immediately fell to the ground without any regards or demeanor. Oh, damn it, I'm so tired. I've never battled continuously for so long before, killed so many of them. Little brother, this means that your stamina is still insufficient. It's because I've spent most of my time in the sect, there's no way I can compare to big brother Moe. I see that you are a good little seedling, but you just lack real battle experience. How is it? Any interest in joining our Shadow Qilin Guards? This brother here promised to train you well. Luo Jiyun had not replied when he saw Mo Yi's expression change and suddenly cried out loud, "Get down now." Luo Jiyun had yet to understand what was happening, but he immediately followed Mo Yi's instructions. As he got down onto the floor, he saw Mo Yi unsheath the long sword by his waist and leapt into the air and made a dazzling arc with the sword in hand. When his blade fell, fresh blood spilled on the ground. What's happening? Luo Jiyun asked dumbfoundedly. Scarlet-eyed blood bats, the scarlet-eyed blood bats. They have caught up with us. Hurry, get ready to battle. This is not as narrow as the entrance. Quick! We've got to stop them before more and more of them. Ah! Scarlet-eyed blood bats. Luo Jiyun was stumped for a moment. But didn't sister-in-law and junior sister already lay in array before? Why are there still scarlet-eyed blood bats? The array did not work. Mo shouted out, "No, that's not right. The array has not been activated at all. What happened? Is there a problem with third miss array?" Moe gritted his teeth and danced around with his long sword and pushed back the first wave of scarlet-eyed blood bats that had charged towards them. Stop talking nonsense and kill off these scarlet-eyed blood bats first. The few of them each brandished their own weapons and continued to battle. However, their limits had been pushed time and time again and their battle ability had dropped down to only a third. Moreover, they no longer had the advantage of the narrow crevice and the number of scarlet-eyed blood bats kept increasing. Very soon, there were more than 10 scarlet-eyed blood bats that attacked them in one wave. What's worse was that they were now very close to the edge of the cliff and they didn't have much space to battle this sudden change in situation. If they made one wrong move, they would fall down into that deep abyss. They had nowhere else to go. It was the worst-case scenario where they had pushed themselves into a death corner. The more they fought, the more helpless and drained they felt. They could even see their end as a shriveled, dried-up corpse. Why have things turned out this way? How could this happen? Where's sister-in-law and junior sister? Why didn't the array work? Luo Jiyun lamented as he lost his last shred of hope. Of course Huang Yueli could not reply him. As they battled and retreated back, they saw Murong and I sitting on a boulder, still as a rock. You can also listen on. Miss Murong, you're here. Where's third miss? Miss Murong, you're here. Where's third miss? Yes, where's sister-in-law? Where did she go? Everyone was looking around, but no matter where they looked, there was not a shadow of her figure. A sense of foreboding crept into their hearts. However, in their hearts, no one wanted to believe that something had happened to Huang Yueli, which was why they still stayed surrounded by the scarlet-eyed blood bats, without breaking out of the encirclement, and asked Murong and I instead. Murong and I started to stammer, this, Yueli, she. What happened to third miss? Quick, just say it out. Moe was the most anxious of them all and had thrown away all courtesy and bellowed loudly. Master had entrusted the safety of mistress into his hands. His only request was to protect her, and as a personal guard, this meant that he was to stake his life to ensure the safety of Huang Yueli. However, now she had gone missing, and it was highly likely that something untoward had happened to her. How could he explain to his master? However, after Murong's deliberation, he still heard the answer he dreaded the most. Yueli, just now while we were laying the array, she was not careful and stepped onto a weathered edge, and then she suddenly just fell off the cliff as the floor crumbled beneath her. I wanted to save her, but, sniff sniff sniff, everything happened so fast and before I could react in time. How could this be? Third miss fell off the cliff. Heavens! Sister-in-law, she really... The moment lies flew out of her mouth, Murong and I no longer hesitated and spun them out beautifully. Yes, if not for that, our array would have been completed. It's because Yueli met with an accident, so I can't complete the array alone, that's why the situation is like this now. Everyone looked at each other in disbelief. However, no one doubted Murong's words. It was because no matter what bad history Murong and I and Huang Yueli had between them, she wouldn't harm her at such a critical juncture because it would evidently be harming herself. It's the end. We're done for. Luo Jiyun's heart cried out sorrowfully. The array's not completed, we're trapped here and there are more and more scarlet-eyed blood bats. It's just a matter of time before we end up as dried-up corpses. While he was saying this, his actions slowed down, and with this slight error, he was immediately clawed by a scarlet-eyed blood bat. Master Luo. Moe rushed forward frantically and rescued him in time. He berated him harshly, Master Luo, how can you give up so easily? You are our prided genius of our sect, are you willing to throw your life away just like this? Luo Jiyun tightened his hand over his wound, his face was as pale as a piece of paper. Of course I don't want to die. But look around you. What other ways are there? Moreover, now that sister-in-law has met with a mishap, tell me how am I to face senior brother? After hearing his words, all the three guards hung their heads low in silence. Ever since their master suffered from a trauma since childhood, he had always been distrustful towards others, more so for the relationships between men and women. It was such a rare and destined meeting that their master had fallen in love at first sight with this wonderful lady. Not to mention she was outstanding in both temperament and talents, she was truly the most suitable lady for their exceptional master. You can also listen on. Truth be told, even as his subordinates, they were sincerely happy for him. Truth be told, even as his subordinates, they were sincerely happy for him. With such a bright, beautiful and adorable future mistress, everyone was very optimistic. However, she was just like a fleeting cloud. She had only appeared by Li Moying's side for less than a month, and just because they had not protected her properly, she had left this mortal world. Moe thought back to the moment when Li Moying had parted ways with them. How happy and excited he was to personally get the magical beast core for his beloved woman just to win her favor. When he came back with the magical beast core and found that his precious woman was no longer around, it was really hard to imagine what kind of blow this would bring to him. Perhaps he would return back to his former self where he did not trust others and become cold again. The few of them deepened their gaze. Only Murong and I had shrunk into one corner, deep in thought as she bit on her lips. The scarlet-eyed blood bats started to increase in numbers, and the 5 of them were pushed further and further back, closer and closer to the edge of the cliff. With one glance, just 10 steps more and they would fall into the abyss and their bodies smashed without any remains. Luo Jiyun laughed bitterly. It looks like I am destined to die here today. It is my greatest pleasure to be able to fight together with a few big brothers for so long. It's only not being able to safely send junior sister back to the sect. Before he could finish saying his last words, there was a thunderous explosion in front of him. Following that, the entire sky suddenly lit up in a dazzling gold light and a flash of lightning tore through the night sky and shot straight into the cave. Those scarlet-eyed blood bats that were in the path of it screeched and were split into 2 halves by this lightning. Another 2 flashes of lightning fell and bodies of the scarlet-eyed blood bats just fell to the ground in succession. Luo Jiyun and the rest kept slashing continuously to avoid being covered by these scarlet-eyed blood bats that were raining down on them. In the midst of this chaos, on Murong Ni's face was surprise and elation as she shouted out loud, "It's Senior Brother. It must be Senior Brother who has come to save us." The others had similarly recognized Li Moying's signature move and their hearts leapt with joy. With this new spark of hope, this reignited their zeal and they no longer felt tired and straightened their backs as they continued their slaughter. A short moment later, Li Moying's figure was seen as he leisurely walked over. Since he had just executed such a domineering profound skill, the remnant profound chi was still present in his body, and this had caused a large sphere of domain to surround him as this pressure was oppressive and suffocating. The only answer Li Moying had was a strange silence. The only answer Li Moying had was a strange silence. This question of his, no one dared to answer. Li Moying seemed to have noticed something. He paused and asked again, "Where's little Lear?" This time round, his voice was extremely cold. Although his voice sounded extremely calm, however, everyone here were all people who were very familiar with him, and they knew that the more calm he sounded, the more rage burned within him. No one dared to utter a single word this time as well, and all he got was a long silence. The uneasiness in his heart became heavier with each passing moment, and a horrific thought even flashed by. With the swing of the long sword in his hand, a flash of thunderbolt streaked across and landed at the corner, and the broken debris rolled down, crumbled down the abyss, following with the tumbling and crashing of the debris against the cliff walls. Everyone subconsciously shrank their necks. They knew that this time for sure he had been entirely enraged. "I am going to ask one last time, where's little Lear? Where is she?" "What?" "No one dares to talk. No one is going to tell me. Is that so?" "Luo Jiyun, you speak." Luo Jiyun felt his entire back drenched with cold sweat when he heard Senior Brother call out his name. Facing an enraged Li Moying, somehow he felt that facing the scarlet-eyed blood bats just now wasn't as pressurizing as this. However, all he could do was to muster up his courage, and while facing that pair of eyes that were staring straight at him, he could only spit everything out incoherently. "Say, Senior Brother, you have to be calm, don't be too impulsive. No one wanted this to happen, however it's really all too unexpected." Luo Jiyun mumbled and rambled as he racked his brains and thought about how he should continue. In order not to let Li Moying suffer too heavy a blow, he was trying to break the news to him in a more gentle manner. However, what he had not noticed was that this manner of speaking had already entirely given himself away. Luo Jiyun, in 3 sentences, speak clearly on what happened to little Lear. His cold voice penetrated the heart of Luo Jiyun and caused him to tremble from fear. Say, S.E., senior brother. First sentence. Hearing that he had already started counting, Luo Jiyun felt his entire body drenched in cold sweat. However, he no longer had the time left to think about it anymore and could only close his eyes helplessly and spilled everything he knew from start to finish. Just now, sister-in-law was laying in a rain nearby and she had accidentally stepped on a weathered portion and fell down into the abyss. He said everything out in one breath and he felt his entire scalp go numb. He thought that his senior brother would go ballistic and start a rampage and destroy everything all around. However, there was no movement. Luo Jiyun raised his head cautiously and looked left and right. He saw Moe and the rest look at him in reverence. It seemed as if they were praising a strong man who was unafraid of death. Luo Jiyun was immediately depressed and turned his gaze to Li Moying. Contrary to his expectations, there was not a single expression of anger on Li Moying's face. He had maintained his calm composure, however, it was this calmness exactly that made everyone quiver in fear. When Luo Jiyun's gaze fell onto the hand that was holding onto the sword, he noticed that it was trembling non-stop. Moreover, it looked like he was trying to restrain himself but he was unable to stop it. Senior brother, my condolences. Luo Jiyun could feel his inner grief and indignation but didn't know how to console him. Only after a long while did Li Moying manage to barely control himself. You can also listen on. This time round when he spoke, Li Moying's voice had already regained his composure. What was the specific situation? Speak clearly, I want to know every single detail. Moe, you speak. Yes, master. Moe stepped forward. Compared to Luo Jiyun who was crumbling under pressure, Moe's explanation was much calmer and spoke clearer. Facing Li Moying who was clearly on the brink of collapse, Moe could still maintain his reason and composure as he coherently explained the entire matter as detailed as possible. Li Moying did not interrupt as Moe spoke. But anyone could see that his jaw was tightening as Moe continued on. They could see his burning rage that he was trying hard to suppress. As soon as Moe finished, he stepped back. Li Moying turned his head and his frosty gaze rested on Murong and I. The moment Li Moying had shown up, Murong and I had been trying to hide behind Luo Jiyun's back and tried to minimize her presence and avoided all eye contact with Li Moying. Inevitably, the moment when Moe had spoken on the matter of Huang Yuele falling off the cliff, Li Moying's gaze had been locked onto her. Murong and I really feel sorry for Master. He is such an esteemed elder who is known throughout the lands for his heroic name. How did he have such a spoilt and stupid daughter? Li Moying had always been polite to this daughter of his master whom he deeply respected. He would seldom point out her mistakes, not to mention using the words spoilt and stupid. Murong and I cried out with a loud wah and sorrowfully said, Senior brother, this matter cannot be blamed on me entirely. I didn't know that she would step on a weathered rock and when she had fallen off, I also wanted to save her. It really wasn't intentional. She had deliberately concealed the matter of her pushing Huang Yuele away. She only mentioned that Huang Yuele had stepped on the weathered rock on her own. After the lie was said a few times, at times one would also think of it as the truth. It was like this for Murong and I now. That was why she cried and wailed, and the more she cried, the more wronged she felt. Her heart was filled with grievance and she cried even louder. Li Moying sneered and replied, So Murong's second miss, can you explain to me why did you leave on your own and even attracted the wrath of the scarlet-eyed bloodbats? If it was not for Lear and her prompt actions, you all would be dead by now. You may reap what you sow, but what about my junior brother, my subordinate and my fiancé? They had all been dragged down by you. Murong and I was scared by his ice-cold tone and her tears continued to fall. Senior brother, boo-hoo-hoo, I really didn't mean it. All I wanted to do was to help you to find the profound lunar jade sooner, this way you can make it in time before the full moon. Shut up. You still dare to argue back. When Li Moying looked at Murong and I, there was still a trace of hatred that could not be concealed. The profound qi in his body was propelling out of control and Murong and I could not take it and spit out a mouthful of blood. Junior sister. Senior brother, don't be hasty. Luo Jiyun called out and appeared before Murong and I in a hurry. He had never seen his senior brother this angry before and he even heard junior sister that everyone doted on. You're too willful. It's all because of your selfishness and stupidity that harmed my little Lear. You better pray to your ancestors that Lear comes back alive, if not, even if Master came himself, he would not be able to save you. I will definitely make you pay the price. Murong and I was scared silly and her whole body was quivering like a leaf. Li Moying's face was still impeccable but at this moment, he seemed as if he was a devil that came from hell. You can also listen on. Lear, Lear. Li Moying muttered her name as he looked at the bottomless abyss. He felt as if his heart had been savagely torn apart. It was as if, a very long, long time ago, he had also experienced such a heartbreaking pain. To be parted forever, separated in life and death. Painfully losing a love that was part of his heart. Such a feeling was imprinted clearly in the deepest part of his heart. Lear, Lear. His whole soul was calling out this name. His pain was excruciating to the point that he could no longer bear it and he had to bend down as he clutched his head tightly. In front of him, an elusive figure flashed before him, a beautiful lady with a captivating smile. That image flashed by too fast and he could not remember how that lady looked like exactly. He could only remember that vague feeling that it was a peerless beauty. Senior brother. Senior brother. Don't scare me. Master. What happened? These noisy exclamations drifted into his ears and the elusive figure in front of him disappeared but the excruciating pain in his head still remained. Did she fall from here? Li Moying suddenly spoke. Ha. Yeah, it should be. Junior sister mentioned it just now. Luo Jiyun replied without much thought but when he saw the unusually calm look on Li Moying, his heart suddenly tightened. Senior brother was so angry just a moment ago but now. He had a bad feeling. Senior brother, what do you want to do? Don't be too hasty, first you need to calm down, the dead can't be resurrected. Shut up. Li Moying bellowed suddenly. You're not allowed to curse little Lear. She is so clever, she is most definitely still alive. I need to go down and find her. What? Luo Jiyun thought that he had heard wrongly for a moment. However, Li Moying had already stood up and was taking large strides straight to the location where Huang Yueli had fallen off. Senior brother, don't be impulsive. Sister-in-law definitely must be saved but you cannot be too hasty and anxious. Yes. Master, third miss had fallen off quite some time ago. There's no need to be in such a hurry, if she is fine, it's highly likely that she had already escaped danger. Moe had said this against his own consciousness because he had already determined in his heart that Huang Yueli had already died without a complete corpse. Falling from such a high place into a bottomless abyss. Moe had even thought that if it was he himself that had fallen, with his cultivation he would still find it a challenge to survive. Not to mention a cultivator of the first realm. However, he did not dare to stimulate Li Moying at all at this moment. But alas, Li Moying only spat out 2 words coldly, "Let go." His voice was imbued with an oppressive pressure, and although it wasn't loud, it shocked the eardrums. Moe took a sudden big step forward and knelt down to block Li Moying. He was just short of 1 step to grabbing his thigh. "Master, if you want to save people, you still need to have a concrete plan first. This area is very close to the restricted zone. We do not know what magical beasts are lurking below nor what tier they are. It is extremely dangerous, and you are our eminent and invaluable backbone of our sect. How can you take such a risk?" Ah! However, before he could finish his words, Li Moying flourished his sleeve. With a sweep of his profound chi, Moe could no longer kneel and was swept to one side. He was not injured before he could regain his balance. Li Moying had jumped into the abyss. "No! Senior brother! Master!" Everyone cried out in anguish as they rushed to the edge of the cliff and looked down. Li Moying's black robe seemed to have melded into the dark abyss, and after a while, his figure could no longer be seen. You can also listen on. In the white-winged golden-crested vulture's nest. 2 white-winged golden-crested vultures flew closer and closer as their large wings flapped magnificently. Their powerful aura enveloped the entire sky. After the little phoenix hid back into the sky phoenix ring, he immediately feigned death, and no matter how many times Huang Yueli called him, there was no response. Huang Yueli also knew that the little thing had also overdrawn all of his profound qi, and even if he came back out, he wouldn't be of any use. She could only count on herself now. But what should she do? In terms of strength, she did not even measure to a single claw of this huge beast. The armaments she carried were many, however, most of them had been used during that assault against the BBS just now. Even if there were some left, they were only armaments of the 4th grade. Against MBs of the 7th tier, they did not play any significant roles. Seeing how she could not avoid it, Huang Yueli wrecked her brains, and a sudden epiphany struck her when she thought of her newly contracted pet. She beckoned the little vulture with her hands. Little vulture had been sitting quietly by the side for quite some time now, and it was feeling extremely aggrieved, feeling that its master was very cold and heartless. When it saw that Huang Yueli had called for it, it excitedly rushed over and even affectionately nudged its poky little head against her, and Huang Yueli was pushed over. "Cough, wait a moment, don't push me anymore, sister here has something important to say." Huang Yueli tried to reason with it, however no matter what, it was just a newly hatched chick, so it was rather impossible to communicate with it properly. When she was pushed over the second time round, Huang Yueli finally gave up. She stared intently at the little vulture and her eyes flashed a moment, and she used her piercing sky eye technique. In a flash, the little vulture trembled a moment and it was under her control. To control a young magic beast was not too difficult a feat, and not too much mental fortitude was needed. But it would still cause some damage to its weak consciousness. Since this little vulture was already her contracted pet, she did not want to make use of such a method to control it. Unfortunately, she did not have enough time to train it, and in such a precarious situation, she had no other alternative but to use it in order to escape. The little vulture who had been controlled became very obedient. In accordance to her instructions, it sat quietly beside her, and Huang Yueli rolled herself into a ball and hid under the little fluff ball. Just as she hid, the 2 white-winged golden-crested vulture landed in the nest. Squawk! Squawk squawk! The father and mother white-winged golden-crested vultures called out happily. They had not expected that one egg had hatched so soon. The white-winged golden-crested vulture was a very powerful species, however, they were very rare, the main reason being the probability of their eggs hatching was too low. Most of the white-winged golden-crested vulture's eggs don't hatch in the end. In the same batch of eggs, the faster one hatches, the stronger one's bloodline was and the stronger one would be in the future. This batch of eggs was still warm. However, surprisingly, there was already one egg that hatched already. What a talented genius this little vulture must be. The two white-winged golden-crested vultures were extremely excited and they flapped their wings in joy to celebrate their new addition to their family. They were flapping their wings happily and were walking over to show their affection to it. Huang Yuele had been carefully hiding beneath its soft fuzz under its abdomen, but because it still wasn't big enough, it barely covered her. You can also listen on. That was why she did not dare move a single bit. More so, she did not dare to even look out. When she heard the two white-winged golden-crested vultures squawk incessantly, she was a bit weary and baffled at the same time. She had never heard that these white-winged golden-crested vultures were so noisy. Why were they squawking so much today? She hadn't realized yet that she had contracted a powerful white-winged golden-crested vulture with a strong potential, but she had a faint sense of foreboding. Sure enough, the parents of the white-winged golden-crested vulture called a few more times and stopped, but they came closer and stuck their tongues out to lick their baby. Damn it! Huang Yuele could not help but curse out in her heart. The little vulture's wings were immediately wet from all the licking from its over-enthusiastic parents, and the saliva dripped down its wings and fell onto the clothes of Huang Yuele. As a scavenger, these white-winged golden-crested vultures mainly fed on the dead bodies of other magical beasts, hence the smell of rot and decay filled its mouth. When this unpleasant rancid smell assaulted her nostrils, Huang Yuele almost fainted. The white-winged golden-crested vulture's mother licked for a while before it suddenly cried out again. Squawk squawk, squawk squawk. White-winged golden-crested vulture father, is there something wrong with our baby? How come it doesn't move at all? Shouldn't it rush into our embrace? Squawk squawk, squawk squawk squawk. White-winged golden-crested vulture mother, you're right, there's something wrong. Something very wrong about it. Can it be that our baby's legs are broken? The couple looked at one another and saw the panic in each other's eyes. Were they really so unlucky? They had wished upon the stars, wished upon the moon, and after so much difficulty, their first egg finally hatched. Not only that, it hatched very early. With such a strong bloodline, it actually had a congenital disability. The white-winged golden-crested vulture mother was anxious immediately, and with its large beak, she pushed the little vulture, trying to make it stand. Huang Yuele found that the little vulture had been moved to the side by a large force and she was nearly exposed, so she quickly moved along the direction with the little vulture. Fortunately, after the little vulture was pushed a certain distance, it suddenly stopped. Only then did Huang Yuele let out a sigh of relief. By now, her entire back was drenched with cold sweat. Heavens! Why were these stupid birds so crazy? Why did they suddenly push little vulture for? Squawk squawk, squawk squawk. White-winged golden-crested vulture mother frowny face, oh no, oh no. We're finished. Our treasure's legs are really not good. Boo-hoo-hoo, once it comes into this world, it actually has to suffer. What's going to happen to it in future? Squawk squawk squawk. White-winged golden-crested vulture father frantically tried to console her. Don't worry, it's nothing. As long as it learns to fly, then all's well. As long as its wings are fine, there's not much impact if its legs aren't good. Us white-winged golden-crested vulture seldom walk anyway. White-winged golden-crested vulture mother flew into the embrace of white-winged golden-crested vulture father as the two cried out in unison. At the beginning, Huang Yuele was still curled up into a ball, and after a while, there was no more movement or pushing, but she heard them screech endlessly in a strange manner which made all her hairs stand. Strange, there was no one around showing any public display of affection. Why did all her hairs stand? She sneakily lifted up the wings of little vulture and peered out and saw two white-winged golden-crested vulture looking at the distance in sorrow. A sudden thought flashed by. These white-winged golden-crested vultures wouldn't think that little vulture kept on sitting, so they thought that there was a problem with its legs. The more she thought about it, the more convinced she was, and 3 black lines slipped down her forehead. How did such a ridiculous situation even come about? You can also listen on. However, such a situation could not remain unresolved. Knowing that they would not give up so easily, what if they run back again and want to teach little vulture how to walk or the likes of it? She would most definitely be exposed. Huang Yueli thought hard and soon a plan was weaved out. After a while, squawk squawk. A tender squawk came from the other side of the nest. The 2 white-winged golden-crested vultures that were filled with sorrow were startled and turned their heads. They did not know when did their little baby, who had been sitting dumbly without moving an inch, had already walked behind the other eggs and was toddling round clumsily. White-winged golden-crested vulture mother opened her eyes wide in astonishment as she relished the moving sight in front of her. Squawk squawk. White-winged golden-crested vulture father, see. Our treasure can walk. There's no problem with its legs. Squawk squawk. White-winged golden-crested vulture mother, but why did it not walk just now? Squawk squawk. White-winged golden-crested vulture father, maybe, because it's lazy. It was as if it was just to confirm white-winged golden-crested vulture's father's guess. Little vulture walked a few more steps and slowly sat down again. From where little vulture was, it was separated by several large eggs so Huang Yueli could hide temporarily. When it stopped, Huang Yueli immediately sneaked back and hid under its wings. Although little vulture had only walked a few steps, it had proven that it had no problems with its legs. The 2 birds felt that they had overreacted to it, but after seeing that their baby could walk, they set their hearts at ease. The sky was getting darker and darker. After feeding little vulture a big piece of meat, the 2 large white-winged golden-crested vultures settled down as well and slowly closed their eyes. Everything became silent. Huang Yueli slowly peeked out from under little vulture's wings, poked her head out and looked left and right as she surveyed her surroundings. She then threw out a small pebble and watched closely as it landed at the side of the white-winged golden-crested vulture. The 2 white-winged golden-crested vultures did not stir and looked to be in deep sleep. She immediately got up and kept the little vulture in the sky phoenix ring and took out a long rope with a claw attached at the end. She had already noted down her surroundings during the day and knew that the white-winged golden-crested vulture's nest was perched on top of a thick and solid golden-leaf banyan tree. This tree trunk was so thick that even if 10 people held their hands together, they still could not go around it. It's estimated to be a few thousand years old, and it grew on a prominent crevice of the wall, slanting outwards. With the aid of the claw and rope, Huang Yueli slid down the trunk of the golden-leaf banyan tree. Very soon, she stepped onto the rock and climbed up the slope of the cliff's wall. After 2 hours, the night was silent, and in the large nest, 2 white-winged golden-crested vultures were sleeping soundly without even realizing that their genius baby that had just hatched had been taken away by someone. A figure flashed and appeared above the nest. That's odd, I sense little fox Aura nearby, why isn't there anyone? His expression was dark and gloomy like the night as he furrowed his brows in scrutiny. His probing gaze swept the entire nest and a glint flashed by his eyes. At one far corner of the nest, lay a piece of purple scarf. This was very familiar to him because this was what Huang Yueli wore. It looks like she really has been here, but where could she be now? Li Moying tightened his grip on the scarf in his hand as he started to think deeply. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli was slowly moving up along the mountain wall under the cloak of the night. After a short while, she climbed onto a flat rock. This cliff was very deep and the moonlight did not reach the depths. In such a dark environment, she could not even see her outstretched hands. The comforting thing was that she was of the flame physique and creating some light was not an issue. With a snap of her fingers, a small flame danced above it and illuminated the path before her. This entire area was barren and not a tree was in sight. Everything all around her was just weathered rocks and mud. Naturally, there were no magical beasts as well. Huang Yueli let out a sigh of relief and plopped onto the ground in exhaustion. She had been on the edge the entire day and finally she had managed to gain some respite. First, she was chased and hunted down by those BBS and had fought with them the entire day. After that, she fell into the abyss and had escaped death, and yet she had almost died again under the claws of the white-winged golden-crested vultures. It was only until now did she manage to take a breather. Only the heavens knew that she hadn't ate anything since morning. She was absolutely famished and her tummy was rumbling and grumbling in protest. With a thought, she entered the Sky Phoenix Ring. The little phoenix was in deep slumber just at the edge of the Spirit Saint Spring. With one look, you could tell that he was completely exhausted. The little vulture had nestled soundly asleep beside him. Huang Yueli stroked their heads gently. Next, she took out a bottle filled with Spirit Saint Spring water and a variety of pills for healing and left. Although it was very comfortable in her own space, but she had no choice but to leave because only her spirit could enter the Sky Phoenix Ring. Her physical body was still lying outside at the same place. If she was still in the Sky Phoenix Ring and yet her body had received an attack, she would be caught completely off guard. Moreover, now she was in such a dangerous place, she did not dare stay in the Sky Phoenix Ring for too long. After she finished drinking the Spirit Saint Spring water and swallowed a few pills, she finally felt better and she had recovered about 70 to 80% of her strength. She then closed her eyes to rest. She did not dare to sleep too long, and 2 hours later, when the first streak of sunlight streamed in, she woke up immediately. She hasn't escaped from disaster yet, her situation has somewhat better, but she still needed to find a way back up quick. This time round, she looked around and re-examined her surroundings carefully, afraid to miss out any details. As she looked over a mound at the corner, she suddenly exclaimed in surprise and immediately ran over. The nearby floor was slightly sunken down and there were also traces of water. In the eyes of ordinary people, this may be nothing surprising at all. But in the eyes of an astute armament master, this indicated that there was a trace of a hidden trapdoor. In such a desolate place, why would there be a hidden trapdoor? Unless a peerless expert made it. Some of these peerless experts like to hide their treasures in these remote and desolate locations and feel more secure that way. With this thought in mind, her eyes sparkled and immediately dug at the mound, and very soon, a metal handle was revealed. This was at least a 6th grade, and if it was an average person, they would usually use brute strength to forcefully open it. However, if it was forcefully opened, a trap would be triggered and their lives may be forfeited. However, in the hands of Huang Yueli, this was just like child's play. She deftly moved her fingers in a skilled and precise manner, and in a few simple moves, she removed 2 nails. With a clunk, the wall started to vibrate and the wall in front of her opened up, revealing a dark and narrow passage. You can also listen on. Cough, cough, cough. Huang Yueli started to cough vehemently. This secret passage had not been opened for a long time and dust had accumulated over the years. She had choked on the thick layer of dust that had suddenly stirred. When the dust finally settled down, Huang Yueli peeked in and looked around curiously before she entered the secret passage. Although it looked very normal from the outside, when she entered, it was like paradise. The entire passage was made of lucent silk jade and the entire place glowed with an ethereal glow. At the end of the passage was a house. The interior was very simple. There was one hall with several rooms. The startling thing was that the entire place was made of lucent silk jade. It was obvious that the owner of this place was extremely rich. Huang Yueli cautiously entered the room nearest to her. This room was extremely bare. There was only a table and chair. On the table lay a few scattered books. Huang Yueli walked over and casually picked one book up and flipped through it. Her movements were very gentle because the pages had shown obvious signs of aging, as the dilapidated yellow and crisp pages needed extra delicate touch, or else they might just crumble into pieces if too much force was used. Master Yuntian, so this place actually belongs to the 9-tiered armament master that had lived 3,000 years ago. After flipping through a few more pages, her face lit up in astonishment. In the entire soaring heavens continent, to be a cultivator of the 9th realm wasn't too difficult a feat. However, to be a 9-tiered master in all professions was beyond difficult. That was because the 9th was actually an honorary title for the professions of alchemists and armament masters, and there had only been one who held both of this title. Once one attains this title, it signifies that he is the best in the world. In her past life, Huang Yueli was the one and only 9th-tier armament master in the soaring heavens continent. She was the #1 armament master in the world. This armament master was also a 9th tier, and this proved that he was a very powerful person, and the standard 3,000 years ago was even higher than the present. Many ancient methods had been lost through the harsh passage of time. She had even heard that at that era, there were also special formulas for armament crafting. To even share the insights of his attainments was simply unbelievable. Huang Yueli excitedly flipped through all the books on the table and found that these were all notes that Master Yuntian had written, and in it were various methods and formulas that she had never even heard of before. She was beaming as she kept all these away back into her Sky Phoenix ring without any further thoughts. It's a blessing in disguise. I've struck a fortune. At least my luck isn't too bad. I knew it. How could my luck be so bad? Huang Yueli wanted to continue to explore the other rooms. However, the moment she pushed open the door, there was a strong sense of danger. She subconsciously felt a chill run down her spine and she stepped back immediately. This step had saved her life. Outside the door, a red figure suddenly appeared and swiped its sharp claws at the position she had just stepped out a moment before. Flowing Cloud Fire Leopard. Her heart almost jumped out. This was a 7th-grade magical beast of the fire attribute, the Flowing Cloud Fire Leopard. This type of magical beast was named after the pattern that resembled flowing clouds on its body. Not only was it known for its speed, power, and defense, it also was proficient in fire attacks. When it spits out a fireball from its wide jaws, it can easily turn a person into charcoal. Although Huang Yueli had escaped the sneak attack of the Flowing Cloud Fire Leopard, this room was too small, and when the leopard turned, it easily discovered her hiding in the corner. You can also listen on. Seventh-grade magical beast was equivalent to a cultivator of the 8th realm. Huang Yueli knew that she couldn't escape, but she refused to sit still to await death. Even if there was a glimmer of hope, she would try all means and ways to escape. She no longer cared about anything else and took out all the armaments she had left for attacking and used them all. All of them were released together, and for a moment, the entire room was filled with thunderbolts, fire, and menacing sword intents. The Flowing Cloud Fire Leopard was being oppressed momentarily, but it was only hindered for a short while before it quickly chased after its prey. Huang Yueli used the fastest speed she could muster, and all she had in her head was just one thought: escape. If she could not escape, she would definitely die with regrets. But alas, their difference in speed was simply too wide, and in a few steps, the Flowing Cloud Fire Leopard had caught up to her. Just when she thought that she would die, a reverberating bang resounded and a dazzling blue lightning streaked through the void and hit the body of the Flowing Cloud Fire Leopard. The fire leopard was stunned by the electric current and subconsciously stepped back and looked at the attacker with caution. Huang Yueli was also stunned, and before she could react, she felt someone hook her waist and pulled her away from the fire leopard and felt herself flung to a corner. "Little lass, you really are quite something. Just got rid of 2 white-winged golden-crested vultures, and in such a short while, you've provoked a flowing cloud fire leopard." "Ah." Hearing this familiar magnetic voice close to her ears, Huang Yueli immediately jerked her head up. "You, Li Moying. How are you here?" The man before her eyes was wearing a black robe and held a long sword in one hand, looking majestic, domineering and irresistibly charming. If she was to omit out the murderous glint in his eyes, he really looked as if he was an immortal that had stepped out of a painting. Seeing a flustered Huang Yueli before him, Li Moying felt a fire in his heart ignite. After jumping off the cliff, he was in a hurry and extremely worried that she might have fallen to her death, or she might have entered the restricted zone and encountered a magical beast. He had spent the entire night searching for her. Fortunately, before they were separated, Li Moying had secretly left a spirit imprint on her, and with this link, he was able to trace her whereabouts. However, this spirit imprint was affected by distance. The further one was from one another, the weaker the link was. That was why Li Moying had spent a lot of effort to finally find this place. The moment he saw Huang Yueli standing before him safe and sound, he was so happy that he had almost cried on the spot. He was just about to run to her and hug her tightly. Only with her within his embrace would comfort his heart that was ridden with fear and worry. However, before he had moved, Huang Yueli suddenly came out. But behind her was actually a 7th-grade flowing cloud fire leopard, and it was 1 inch away from slicing her throat with its claws. Li Moying was so scared that his heartbeat almost stopped. He immediately threw out an attack and saved her. He really couldn't imagine that if he was just 1 second too late, he would see her fall into a pool of blood. Just the thought of this scared him so bad. However, what made him even more angry was that his little fox still had on a confused expression. This woman was usually very smart, but why couldn't she properly protect herself? "You, be good and wait for me to clean this up. Give me a moment and let me teach you a lesson later," Li Moying said curtly as he glared at her. "You can also listen on." Although he really wanted to properly teach his little fox a lesson right now, the magical beast that was running rampant was in his way, so he had to get rid of it first. Although the flowing cloud fire leopard had been hit by Li Moying's lightning sword, however, its defense was pretty insane, and so it received only a light injury. It was stunned and had retreated a few steps back before it observed Li Moying for a short while when it suddenly leapt forward. Li Moying flourished his sleeves and Huang Yueli was pushed even further back before he started to engage the flowing cloud fire leopard in battle. Huang Yueli was thrown into the far corner and almost fell over. By the time she had turned around, Li Moying had already exchanged a few moves with the flowing cloud fire leopard. Because they were fighting in a cave, Li Moying could not use the thunderbolt, which was too powerful. He was worried that if he used it, the mountain may be split open and he might cause a landslide and bury themselves alive. That was why he had only been using simple moves to battle against this fire leopard. Despite this, he was still dominating this fight. At first, Huang Yueli was still very nervous and was watching Li Moying intensely, worried that he may be torn into half by the flowing cloud fire leopard. After all, this was a 7th-grade magical beast we're talking about. 7th-grade magical beasts were equivalent to cultivators of the 8th realm, while Li Moying was only at the 6th degree realm of the 9th level. The difference between the two was by a large margin of 2 realms. It could be said that in front of a flowing cloud fire leopard, an ordinary cultivator of the 6th degree realm was very vulnerable. Even if Li Moying had a deep comprehension and had a wealth of experience, she still thought that this difference of 2 realms was really too wide. However, things weren't what she had expected. Whenever Li Moying attacked, each strike was powerful, fast and accurate. His movements were fluid like a flowing stream of water. Very soon, the flowing cloud fire leopard was forced into one corner and its entire body riddled with wounds and the floor was dyed red in its blood. A moment later, Li Moying threw out a thunderbolt and with a smooth and fluid manner, he kept his sword back in its scabbard. Without even looking at the fire leopard, he turned around. Until the moment he had arrived before Huang Yueli, the flowing cloud fire leopard collapsed onto the ground. Huang Yueli looked on with a stupefied expression. You've killed the flowing cloud fire leopard already. But, aren't you only in the 6th degree realm of the 9th level? With such an incredulous fighting prowess, it was very similar with Mu Qingying. Moreover, both of them were both cultivators of the thunder attribute. In her mind, suddenly there was a spark. However, it flashed by too quickly and she couldn't think of anything. Li Moying did not answer her question but held her shoulders and pushed her to the wall. His tall and strong body leaned against her weak and petite body in a strong and overbearing manner. At this moment, he had just fought a big battle and the profound qi in his body had still not settled, giving a sense of oppressive pressure that couldn't be resisted. He bowed his head down and his handsome face slowly approached Huang Yueli and very soon, they were so close to each other that their noses almost touched. His eyes seemed to contain 1,000 words as he looked at her beautiful eyes which reflected some trepidation. Huang Yueli looked at his perfect face so close to hers and all the words that she had wanted to say and all the questions that she had wanted to ask instantly flew out of her head. She could only stare blankly and felt as if she was a small fox that had been entrapped by a hunter. Little Lear. Li Moying said in a raspy voice, his warm breath could be felt on her lips. They were so close, yet their lips had not touched. This felt even more ambiguous than a real kiss. You can also listen on. Before I left, I had obviously told you to be good and wait for me to come back. In the end, you've let yourself come to be in such a precarious situation. Tell me, how should I punish you? Li Moying spoke in a low, magnetic voice in a tone that was filled with threat. However, Huang Yueli did not seem to notice the danger at all. She was already confused and lost because he was so close. What? Looking at her entranced and seemingly lost, a glint flashed by his eyes. The next moment, he pressed his lips upon hers and started to plunder deeper and deeper. A scorching deep kiss was as if it could burn everything into ashes and it rendered the maiden in his arms not the slightest resistance. Huang Yueli who was leaning in his arms felt her consciousness blur. She knew that she should push him away, because her heart belongs to another. She should not allow any other man to be so close to her but she just couldn't resist it. The man tasted her sweetness until her delicate lips were swollen from being kissed before he unwillingly let her go gently. However, his arm was still wrapped tightly around her waist. Until he felt the warm body in his hands did he finally feel that this was all real. His little fox was now out of danger and safe in his arms. How can you kiss me? Huang Yueli finally came to her senses and asked him angrily with a red face. Li Moying raised his brows, why can't I? You are mine, your kiss, of course it also belongs to me. I am not. Before she could finish her sentence, she was interrupted by him. I advise you to think twice before you speak because my mood now isn't all too good. If you say something that I am not happy with, I may get even more upset and I will kiss you even more to vent my anger. Huang Yueli's eyes widened and wanted to scold, shameless, however she did not utter a thing. Based on past experience, Li Moying was a man who was true to his words. As long as he says it, he would do it. His threat was naturally effective. Li Moying saw her flustered face but yet she did not say anything. That pair of sparkly bright eyes filled with grievance that were left unsaid, made it hard for him to endure. His heart softened immediately, however, his tone was still stern. What would you like me to say? I know that you are smart and ingenious, but no matter what, you are still a cultivator of the first realm. Remember this well. Why do you want to act like a hero? Did anyone ask you to go save Murong and I? Did anyone ask you to lay an array? Thank heavens I had put a spirit imprint on your body, or else, it would be a dead body that I'm talking to. His harsh words made Huang Yueli unhappy. Hey! What are you talking to me like that? It's not as if I wanted all that. How would I know that Murong and I would antagonize the scarlet-eyed blood bats? She can lose her life, but what about Big Brother Moe and the rest who had been dragged into her mess? Don't tell me that I should also not care about them. What's more, the reason why I laid an array was because I had it all planned out carefully. It was the perfect plan. Well, it would have been, if not for Murong and I. If not for her, such a laughable accident wouldn't happen at all. Murong and I. Why did you mention her? Didn't you accidentally fall off the cliff yourself? When Li Moying heard her words, he was stunned for a moment. He found it strange and quickly asked. You can also listen on. What did she say to you? Huang Yueli sneered and told everything that had happened on that cliff from head to toe. Li Moying's expression started to crumble and contort in anger. That damned girl. I only thought that she's been too pampered and spoiled, didn't think that her personality was so twisted. Never would I have imagined that she would even dare to do such atrocities. If I had known earlier, I would have just smacked her to death with one strike. Huang Yueli was slightly taken aback as she asked with furrowed brows, smack her to death? But isn't she your master's precious daughter? So what? Li Moying replied angrily, she even dares to harm you, that itself deserves the death penalty. She's not even worth a finger of yours. Moreover, she is so young yet she has such a vicious heart. Just because you are more talented than her, she wants to kill you. Tell me, what use is there to keep the life of such a venomous woman? When Huang Yueli saw his outburst, she felt a warm wave wrap her heart. This man here, he really placed her as the most important person in his heart. Even if it was the daughter of the master that he held deep gratitude for, still did not make him waver. How in the world had she managed to get such a remarkable man to treat her like this? She let out a long sigh as she took a step forward and leaned her head on his shoulder. All right, don't worry anymore. Am I not well? Also, I don't think that she had deliberately harmed me, it could well be just an accident. But this matter is not over just like that. Don't interfere and let me teach her a lesson myself. Never in his wildest dreams did he think that she would take her own initiative to approach him, and he stood there petrified. Truth be told, after an entire day of adventures of climbing, rolling and fighting, Huang Yueli's entire body was gray, covered in dust and filth. Not to mention earlier on when she had also been blessed with the saliva from the white-winged golden-crested vulture, she wasn't exactly looking her best at this moment. However, to Li Moying, she was incredibly adorable and the most beautiful lady in his heart. He hugged her tightly and asked in a low voice, You nearly scared me to death, being a cultivator in the first-degree realm and falling from such a high place. How did you manage to survive? Huang Yueli was suddenly tongue-tied. She had preserved this little life of hers all due to the outstanding performance of Little Phoenix. But the existence of Little Phoenix wasn't something that she could casually mention. After all, he was one of her most important secrets. She tried to evade it and replied in a casual tone, I was very lucky. When I fell, I actually landed in a nest of white-winged golden-crested vultures. I then hid behind the eggs and fortunately, the white-winged golden-crested vultures did not notice me and I managed to sneak off after they fell asleep. Li Moying scrunched his brows as he looked at her. It was obvious that she was not speaking the entire truth. Huang Yueli was afraid that he would pry further and she quickly changed the topic. Oh right, I stumbled upon this place by chance. It belongs to a 9th grade armament master from 3,000 years ago. I've just discovered quite a number of manuals related to armaments. This time round, I've struck it rich. He he he. She smiled brightly and revealed her 2 little sharp teeth. Li Moying was still sullen and remained unmoved. Huang Yueli pouted and said thoughtfully, however, I've only been into one room and before I could explore the rest, I met that hateful flowing cloud fire leopard. Now everything's great, with you as my bodyguard, we can go and explore all the other rooms. Li Moying looked at her coldly, trying hard to maintain his stance. This little girl still wants to try to get away with it so easily. Humph. How could it be so easy? You can also listen on. You. Before Li Moying could say anything more, Huang Yueli had held his wrist and pulled him along as she ran off in the direction of another door jovially. Come on, let's go have a look together. Whatever Li Moying had wanted to say had all been swallowed back. He lowered his head and saw the slender little hand that held his wrist in disbelief. She would actually take the initiative to hold his hand. And it was a very natural move, not as if she had mulled over it. Thinking of this, all his rage that had been suppressed could no longer be vented. Forget it, he thought to himself. If he wanted to tame his wife, he could do it at any time. Since the atmosphere now was so good, he shall first accompany his little fox to hunt for treasure together. Li Moying found an excuse for himself without realizing that he had already been led by the nose by Huang Yueli. But alas, this poor man did not know that this manner that they got along continued on in the future. When Huang Yueli opened the door to the second room, she cried out in surprise at the same time. There is actually an armament furnace here. It looks like this is the armament room of Master Yun Tian. Li Moying followed her and strode in. The room was quite large and it had a very high ceiling as well. The walls were covered in a thick layer of gray which were apparent traces of smoke and ash. The entire floor was scattered with many remnants of discarded byproducts, piles of ashes and soot all around, and it looked very messy and dirty. Huang Yueli was unfazed by this scene, and the moment she stepped in, she let go of Li Moying's hand as she skipped off to the armament furnace in the center of the room. When Li Moying felt her release her hand, he felt a little lost. But when he saw her face lit up with excitement, he shook his head helplessly and followed closely behind. What are you looking at? Huang Yueli had bent over enthusiastically. She almost sprawled onto the furnace as she looked left, right, up and down, her little face all scrunched up, seemingly searching hard for something. Li Moying couldn't help but laugh. With his curiosity piqued, he walked closer to see what his little fox was up to again. Huang Yueli was extremely focused and she didn't seem to hear the man by her side as she started to talk to herself. This is, but it shouldn't be, but no matter what, 3,000 years have passed, it can't be. But then again it could be possible. But looking at these traces, it looks like. What does it look like? Ah! Huang Yueli got a shock from the face that suddenly appeared before her and subconsciously waved her right hand that was covered in soot, leaving a few black handprints on Li Moying's face. Li Moying froze on the spot. Huang Yueli let out a pft before she burst out in laughter. This man had always been cold and aloof, however now that his face had been besmirched by her with all the black smudges on his face, he now looked like a cat. A very proud and aloof cat. It was simply too hilarious. When Li Moying saw that she was laughing with so much delight, he knew that his face should have messed up quite a bit by her. He pursed his lips and with one tug, he pulled her over. What do you want to do? Let go of me. Huang Yueli started to struggle. You dare to smear soot on my face. Li Moying revealed his white teeth with a cheeky grin. I want to take revenge. Ah. What do you want to do? Go away, go away. After a long while, Huang Yueli covered her face while she glared at the man between her fingers. Never would she have thought that Li Moying could be so childish to such an extent. Didn't she just smear some soot on his face? Of course, she did laugh then, but that really was too funny a sight, so she couldn't resist and laugh out loud. How could she be blamed? Of course she couldn't be, right? You can also listen on. In the end, that petty man not only did he not forgive her, he even pulled her over and started to smear soot all over her face. Now, Li Moying's face had already been cleaned. And her sorrowful self, although she couldn't see it, but she could imagine how her soot-smudged face would look like. She lowered her head and looked at her dirty clothes. She then looked over at Li Moying's clean and spotless robes. It was truly a huge contrast. This was just like the disparity between a prince and a maid. Seeing Huang Yueli glaring at him, Li Moying felt rather pleased and he raised his eyebrows as he laughed lightly. Why? Do you still want to come and have another round? That's fine, but I doubt you have this ability. Huang Yueli rolled her eyes at him. Do you think that everyone is as free as you? I have better things to do. She was well aware of the great difference in their abilities. How could she have her revenge? It was highly likely that this man was purposely trying to anger her and trick her to voluntarily run into his arms, and he can take some advantage at the same time. Wishful thinking. Huang Yueli turned her head away sharply and brought her focus back to the armament furnace. Li Moying immediately felt a little gloomy. This broken furnace is almost buried by ashes and the side is also covered in rust. How can it look better than me? Looking at it so intensely, what can you see? Will it grow flowers? What nonsense are you spouting? You are too ignorant. What Huang Yueli disliked most was when others criticize armaments with their limited knowledge and spout a bunch of nonsense. Of all things, Li Moying was exactly like Mu Qingying in this aspect. In the past, he would always speak as if that armament was worthless, and this made her exceptionally mad. What she didn't know was that they did this deliberately to tease her. Huang Yueli turned and stared angrily back at Li Moying as she pointed to the armament furnace and said, as for growing flowers, that's definitely not possible. But if I did not guess wrongly, there is a treasure in there. Oh. Really? Li Moying asked with surprise. Huang Yueli continued to explain, yes, for you people who do not understand armaments, of course you wouldn't know. On the surface, this armament furnace may look dilapidated, but it has a profound mystery actually concealed within. Such types of armament furnaces are very special. The fire is not lit on the outside, but there's actually a hidden compartment within it at the bottom to put in a deviant flame. Only then could one start to refine. To use such an armament furnace, one's mastery in flames must be much higher, but the effect is amplified by few times. That is why this is only used when the armament master wants to refine a treasure. It's so unique. Li Moying's interest was also piqued and he started to walk around the furnace. He even reached his hands out and knocked on it. Wait! Don't knock on it. Huang Yueli quickly rushed forward to stop him. Li Moying looked at the flustered Huang Yueli in amusement. Why are you so petty? Wasn't it just a light knock? What are you saying? Huang Yueli glared at him. I am worried about your safety. If this armament furnace explodes, if you are in the 7th realm or even if you are in the 8th realm, you'll still suffer. Explode? How can it be? This is an antique from millenniums ago. How could it not be possible? The deviant flame that's burning in this armament furnace most probably hasn't extinguished yet and has been burning to this day. She replied earnestly. How can that be? There's such a thing. Even if Li Moying had seen the world and saw many mysterious marvels, he still couldn't help but reveal an incredulous expression. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli nodded her head. At first, I was very surprised as well, but I've been observing it for a long time and I feel that what's happening with this armament furnace is very unusual. She pointed at the pile of ashes on the floor. Look there, these ashes on the floor, some are still glowing. This shows that these weren't left behind from 3,000 years ago but from a much more recent time. Also, the profound qi in this room is circulating with the armament furnace as its core. Usually, this only happens when there is profound qi in the furnace during the refinement process. A glint of surprise flashed by Li Moying's eyes. You mean, unless you are saying that there is still something in this furnace? Even if there's a deviant flame, with sufficient profound qi, burning for 1,000 years is possible. But if what you said is true, there is something in the furnace that from 3,000 years ago. He couldn't continue what he wanted to say because it sounded too outrageous, it had defied any logic. Huang Yueli answered him, that's right, if I'm not wrong, the armament in this furnace has been repeatedly refined for 3,000 years. Li Moying's gaze rested on this shabby and dilapidated armament furnace. After hearing her words, even he couldn't cover up his inner excitement and shock. An armament that has been sealed in this armament furnace from 3,000 years ago. What did this mean? It meant that this Master Yuntian, who was a 9th grade armament master, had specially used such a complex forging method to refine an armament which would be anything but ordinary. Moreover, not knowing what happened to Master Yuntian, after refining halfway, he left and whatever inside the armament furnace has been in there for 3,000 years. The longer an armament was in the armament furnace, the more impurities are removed and the higher the quality. An armament that had the luxury of being refined for 3,000 years was absurdly rare. In her past, Huang Yueli took 3 years to refine a 9th grade armament. This armament was in the armament for 3,000 years. If this armament was successfully forged, how powerful would it be? Even Li Moying's heart was yearning to know. He turned to her and asked, so, you intend to open this armament furnace and retrieve it? Huang Yueli nodded her head, of course. There's no way we can bring this armament furnace along with us. Look at the bottom of it, can you see those 3 contraptions? This is to prevent the armament furnace from moving if it explodes. If the deviant fire doesn't extinguish and the lid is not removed, this armament furnace can never be moved. Li Moying furrowed his brows. Are you sure you have to do this? Isn't it too rushed to open it here? You are not prepared the least bit. If the armament in the furnace has already been scrapped or if there's any accident, no matter what, your life is more important than money. If there's no way to bring this furnace along, just wait for the next time when you've prepared all the necessary things to open it. I will bring you back here then. Huang Yueli blinked and laughed suddenly. You are really a funny person. Usually when people see a treasure before their eyes, wouldn't they want me to quickly retrieve it? And even scheme to do something underhanded while I open it and take the treasure for themselves. Li Moying raised his brows without changing his expression and with a hook of his arms, his hands was wrapped around her slender waist. Little thing, are you telling me that I should grasp the chance I have now and scheme for riches with unscrupulous methods? Do you really think that I don't know how to? Actually, you should know by now that I am not a good person. You can also listen on. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.